Before the season kicks off, everybody's making predictions. Who wins the division? Who makes the playoffs? Who's lifting the trophy at season's end? On Kalshi, America's #1 prediction market platform, you can trade those predictions in a live market.
Will the Seattle Seahawks win the NFC Championship? Right now, the Seahawks are trading at 12%, meaning a $100 trade would pay out $725 if they take the NFC.
On Kalshi, you're trading against peers in a live market, which means there's no house. And as the probability changes, you can buy in and buy out of your position. Trade the draft pick, the game, and so much more on Kalshi. Download the Kalshi app and use the code Wingo to get up to $500 in bonus credits when you trade at least $25. Kalshi, Kalshi. Trade on anything.
18 plus only. Restrictions and eligibility requirements apply. Event contract trading involves risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Kalshi products are not available in all jurisdictions. Prices, values, and available markets may differ from those mentioned. For more information, see kalshi.com/regulatory.
Including how many takes it will take me to do this.
Hey, everybody. Welcome into another edition of Golf Live. Glad you are here with us being Trey Wingo and the great Justin Ray. As is always the case, there is a bleep ton to talk about in the game of golf, and we will get into all of that. We're also going to get into your questions. And for those people that want to submit questions, it's very simple. If you don't know, I've done a bad job explaining that. Drop them on our YouTube page, Trey Wingo Golf. And those are where we get the comments from and the questions. So we always want to make sure we have time to spend with you guys and interact with you because you're taking time out of your day to spend time with us. So if you want to be a part of the comments and questions that the real person, Katrina, will read to us at the end of the show, that's the way to do it. Get your questions and comments in there. Justin, once again, so people know, where in the world is Carmen Sandiego? Where in the world is Justin Ray today?
I'm here back in Ponte Vedra Beach at PGA Tour Studios for the Tee Sheet, our show that we're going to do to preview the Tour Championship, live on the PGA Tour's YouTube and Twitter channels at 6 p.m. Eastern. Come check us out. Myself, Cheyenne Woods, and Shane Bacon previewing all things Eastlake. It's going to have a lot of fun. So many great things to talk about. I mean, not just you know what the news that we're going to speak about here in a minute, but we have an unbelievable race for Player of the Year, seemingly, that hasn't concluded yet. I'm really fired up for this week. I think it's just going to be a great weekend of golf on the PGA Tour and then on the LPGA Tour at TPC Boston as well.
Okay, so you mentioned it. It is the end of the Tour Championship at Eastlake, and it's been a fun thing to have this thing play out the way it is, but there are massive changes coming. Brian Rolapp, the PGA Tour CEO, and will be the commissioner at the end of this season, taking over for Jay Monahan. He will have both titles at that point. Has alluded to the fact that they were going to try and make things different for the playoffs in the upcoming years. And in a press conference today, they did announce that it was going to be a very different look to the playoff. And there's a lot of moving parts to get to in all of this. And we could go through it line by line, but I think the best way to do this is to show our audience something that the PGA Tour put out on their Twitter feed and on their Instagram account. It's about a 90-second to 2-minute video explaining how this thing all works. So the best thing I think for us to do is to show everybody this video, and then we'll break it down after it. So let's run that video now.
This week in Atlanta, the top 30 golfers in the world are teeing it up for the Tour Championship, but starting in 2028, this event will look very different. Back in June, the PGA Tour announced a new model featuring 2 series of events. First, around 120 of the best golfers will be in the field each week on the PGA Tour Championship Series here in red, with others competing on the PGA Tour Challenger Series down here in blue, which will have field sizes of 144 players. So 2 tracks of events running concurrently, with the players and the majors sitting here in their normal spots. Now let's focus in on the Championship Series. Every event will award points, so players will climb and slide through the rankings all year, shown here with these red lines, and as the season comes to a close, the top 90 will keep their status on the Championship Series for next year, and those same 90 will play in the Championship Series finale. It's a normal stroke play tournament, but a few things will happen at the end. Of course, we will have a winner of the event itself, like a typical tournament, but there's also the season-long points leader, who will earn a separate trophy as arguably the best player in the world. And finally, the top 32 players in those season-long points will move on to the 2-week Tour Championship. The new format looks a little bit more like the World Cup than a typical golf tournament, where those 32 get split into 8 groups of 4. And in the first week, each player takes on the other 3 in his group, 1v1, 1 match a day in a traditional match play format. After those 3 rounds, the top 2 from each group, with ties broken in a playoff, move on to the second week at a new course. That leaves 16 players to compete in 4 rounds of bracket-style match play to determine the final standings, with only one going undefeated. undefeated and standing alone as the tour champion. It's fun because most of the time golf is about the players versus the course, but now with this new format, it's whether a player can beat the other guy on the tee box and if they can do it 4 times in a row. The format changes a lot of things about the tour championship, but it also changes where it can go. Traditionally, a golf course is selected to host a tour event based on things like field size, style of competition, and course setup, which rule out a lot of great courses. But moving to a head-to-head match play format with a smaller field, and all of that falls away. And now the championship can rotate through the best courses in the country with a setup that gets fans closer than ever before. It is a big change, and as you watch this installment of the Tour Championship, know that the new format is on the horizon to look forward to in 2028.
Okay, so they're essentially
Oddly satisfying to watch
explained.
that.
Right? That's fantastic. I
so
love
good.
the guy that does this. He does a bunch of stuff like this. He's used in a bunch of different places. But I think the biggest takeaway is, first of all, we're still going to have a tour championship, and that'll determine who wins this thing. But then after that, the top 32 will go into a 2-week match play format. And I love that. You know, you and I have talked about this before, that to me, the playoffs don't feel like real playoffs because so much weight carries over from the regular season. And in every other sport, that's not how it is. We have a regular season award, and then we have a postseason situation. And so many times in football, basketball, baseball, hockey, the teams with the best seasons don't end up winning the playoff. And what I love about this, I think it's going to be a way to determine and value the playoffs as a separate entity as opposed to something that's just sort of a carryover from the regular season.
I like that point. I also think, too, the thing that's going to get people most excited are what we're hearing about some of the venues they're going to be able to go to. Places where we haven't traditionally seen on television, like I've heard Pine Valley, you've heard names like Seminole. I don't know what that's going to end up being, but even if it's not the cream of the crop there in terms of those names, we're going to go to new places and different places that we haven't seen the world's best players compete, which is always exciting. I'm with you. I think there's a level of kind of separation here that gives the postseason itself its own kind of special identity. And no better way to do that than reintroducing match play into this, right? I mean, it's the purest form of the game. We talk about that. I think, too, that people are always afraid of the championship and not having it be a really alluring TV product, right? Where you don't know who you're going to get ultimately. It's not always going to be Scotty versus Rory, Tiger versus Phil in the championship. But I think you're kind of... My friend and colleague Shane Bacon made a great point today. He said, we need to rethink how we get excited about it. Think about the NCAA tournament. We're most excited for the beginning, right? The first 4 days are, arguably more exciting than, the Final Four or Elite Eight. Now you get some matchups down the road eventually that are incredible, but if you, in the NCAA tournament, if you get like Loyola Marymount and like a 7 seed from the Big 12, like, okay, that's going to happen too. But think about how exciting the beginning is where you've got the big names. You're not always going to ultimately get, the superstars at the end, but I think he made a great point of, you can look at this and be excited about different things and not be fearful of what, may or may not come from a match play situation where you don't have, the top names duking it out because somebody else earned their way in. The larger point is, I love that they're returning to match play. I love this introductory element of something different and new. And like you said, it gives the postseason a special identity.
And you've said this all along. The whole thing about these playoffs have been going on for basically 20 years. It's been constant change on how we look at it, how we grade it, how we allow these things going in. So for people saying, wait a minute, this has changed. Yes, this is what this has always been. As long as there's been this FedExCup race, it feels like there's always been something that's been changed and tweaked and sort of put in a different spin. And this, I think, is a whole new ballgame. And I'm looking at somebody out there put up what the possible brackets would be like for the 32 going, if it was in play this year. The first group would have Scotty Scheffler at 1, Matsuyama 16, 17, Ryan Gerard, JT Poston at 32. The second group is Matt Fitzpatrick, Akshay Bhatia. Gary Woodland would be 31 in that one. Lee would be 18. Cameron Young would be the third seed. And you go up to Russell Henley, Rattan, the young Norwegian, and Ricky Fowler. I mean, the idea of how this works is fascinating to me. And when you see it that way, like the top 8 seeds would be Scheffler, Fitzpatrick, Young, Siwoo, Wyndham, Sam Burns, Chris Gotterup, and Tommy Fleetwood. Those are the top 8 in each one of those brackets of 4, and then you whittle it down over the next two rounds. I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, and I worked for years on a preview show at Golf Channel for the match play, where we actually went to Austin. We had a big theater we did it in, and it was a true World Cup type format where you have your A group, B, C, and D, and we drew out who was in each group. Think about that. Like if you've got, Rory McIlroy, theoretically, let's just say this week, I think he's going in 12th or something like that, like into or he did going into the playoffs. Well, the point is, like, you can have these big names and draw out, and they're like, oh, wait, we've got Rory and Scotty in the same group in the first match in the first series of this. Like, there's all kinds of different exciting elements to where you can have really intriguing storylines that kind of open themselves up in kind of a surprise fashion if you've got this World Cup draw type system going on.
Yeah, and I think the whole point of this has been, we need to try and do something new. Because it doesn't, like, again, my biggest takeaway from all of this is, like, if Rory and Scotty can show up for the first 2 and realize they have no danger of being missed out on the final tour championship or the top 5 or whoever, then it's not a real playoff. It's not a real playoff, because a playoff to me is, okay, everything, as we said, did in the regular season, now you got to do it. Look at how we look at whether it's baseball players or football players, quarterbacks specifically. Oh, yeah, that guy was great in the regular season, but did he get it done in the postseason? Derek Jeter might have the greatest stat line of all time when it comes to postseason. He literally played essentially a full regular season of postseason games, and his numbers are off the charts. Hit 300, 20 home runs, all these hits, all this kind of stuff in these clutch moments. You want to see players in a different kind of situation where they don't have this thing where they can just coast through the first couple of rounds knowing they're going to get where they want to be anyway. I love the idea of putting them in a more stressful situation to say, okay, now it's about not what you did in May, April, or June. It's about, can you beat the guy in front of you? Because that's the essence of true competition.
I think, too, the legacy of constant change over these last 20 years with the FedExCup playoffs, it's ultimately because it's a square peg in a round hole. Like, it's
right.
Always going to have something that someone has an issue with, because it's a non-traditional new way of putting a postseason at the end of your year. Like, this sport is always going to be structured in a way where the 4 biggest weeks of the year are what they are, right? And look, you can be additive. You can have a great championship like the Players, and you can have incredible team events like the President's Cup we're going to have coming up here in a couple of weeks. And the FedExCup playoffs are in addition to that as well. But there's always going to be something that you can change, because you can't get an A+ grade on this thing. It's just impossible,
right?
Because of the way people are going to perceive it. So that's why I think you get this constant change. And I think we're one step closer to something great. And I think that's what you're always trying to pursue in this thing that you can never reach perfection in.
Right. So look, it's something new that's coming. It'll take, basically 2 years from now to get here, which sounds weird to say. But I'm really excited about it. I'm excited how this is going to look, and it may turn out to be a disaster. Who knows? But I like the idea of trying something different.
Trey, the sun might explode and kill us all tomorrow. Who knows, buddy?
Correct. It could be 3 minutes from now. So let's shake it up. Let's see what we can do, and we'll move forward. Now, there was something else that Brian Rolapp addressed in his press conference today announcing this, and someone was asking him the question about what are we doing with Rory McIlroy? Because Rory, as we all know, did not complete the 15 tour event limit, to maintain status on the PGA Tour. And Brian had alluded to this in June when he had his press conference at TPC River Highlands before the Travelers Championship. He's like, look, he's not going to make it. We'll figure something out. And basically, he was asked that question again. He's like, well, if you look at that rule, it was a rule about people that had dual memberships between us and the DP World Tour. And it was kind of an archaic rule. And Rory has done wonderful things for us. And my favorite part is he leaned in. But if you look at that rule as written, I have great power over that rule. And so I think everything's going to work out fine, which is basically his way of saying, it ain't a big deal. I'm going to make sure that everything is where it needs to be because, damn it, I say so.
Yeah, it's the higher up at the company who sees the silly HR rule or whatever, some kind of policy that doesn't hurt anybody, is like, no, I don't care. Get it out of here. Like, ultimately, what are we doing? So, I think cooler heads prevail, I guess. That's not the right term, but logic kind of set in, and I don't think anything needs to be done. Also, I just wanted to say the word Ibiza, because that's where Rory was in lieu of making some of these starts. He was in Ibiza.
Yes, and the videos
as megastars should be.
Yes, exactly right. And apparently the best view of the eclipse that happened a couple weeks ago was in Ibiza. Apparently it was the place to be, and maybe that's why Rory was there to begin with.
That's why he's there. It's where he should be.
He's a star watching the starry sky play out. So we'll see what happens there. All right, lots more coming on this show, on this edition of Golf Live. We will get to your questions, and it'll be in a surprise format a little later on. Obviously, we have finality to this season and potentially forever with LIV Golf. We'll deal with that. But when we come back, what did we make of the BMW Championship, and how does that play out going forward, not only into the Tour Championship, but also for Player of the Year? We'll get to that on Golf Live right after this. Quince does fewer, better pieces. Premium materials built to last. Premium denim and tailored chinos starting at $60, with the fit and fabric quality you'd expect from brands charging maybe 3 times that much. Download the Quince app for app-exclusive offers, or go to quince.com/wingo. Get free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. All right, back with you on Golf Live, Trey Wingo and Justin Ray. So we had the second of the playoff events in the FedEx playoffs last week at Bellerive. Technically, I guess it concluded this week on Sunday. I always hate that. Sunday's the start of the week. Now, Sunday's really the start of the week, end of the weekend. We really go on Monday. But that's a separate issue entirely.
It's all a man-made construct, Trey.
It's exactly. Time is a flat circle.
Construct.
It's all whatever we want it to be.
Just keep living, baby. To quote Matthew
exactly
McConaughey.
Right. So we just had the BMW Championship, and Wyndham Clark went into that final round with a 5-stroke lead, and it got hairy for a little bit, but he ended up winning by 3, and he never lost the lead. And that sort of leads us to a broader discussion before we get into what it means going into the Tour Championship. But, you and I, Justin, had talked about this last week, that with the win, his second win of the year at the St. Jude, that it looked like Scottie Scheffler pretty much had done enough to salt away the Player of the Year on the PGA Tour. But then Wyndham Clark does this, and now he has 3 wins on the year, which is more than Scottie Scheffler's 2. They both have a FedEx Cup playoff win, but Wyndham's other win was the U.S. Open. And his third win, or his first win, was at the CJ Cup Byron Nelson, when everyone was looking at Siwoo and Scottie Scheffler in Scottie Scheffler's backyard, kind of, maybe, sort of, as the Dallas Fort Worth metro area continues to grow and grow and grow.
It's really a sprawl at this point.
It's almost its own state. It's
Central
almost
Texas
its own
to
state.
southern Oklahoma. Yeah, it's a big
from
place.
just outside Edmond, Oklahoma, to just outside Amarillo is where the DFW Metroplex is now. But that CJ Cup, the Byron Nelson, he caught Scottie Scheffler and Siwoo from behind by shooting a 60, going 11 under. And I get it; it's not the hardest, whatever. It's still a 60 with 11 underscore, right? He did that. So when you put that in the totality, suddenly it's like, even though Scottie has been so incredibly consistent, and you have chronicled that all year long on this podcast and on this show, it's about results. And you have to, at this point, I if I'm being honest, I like Wyndham's results better than Scottie's results at this point.
Yeah, it depends on what you value more, right? Because I could give you a laundry list of things that Scottie leads the PGA Tour in. Basically, it's a Nikola Jokic type situation where he's scoring, birdie average, strokes gained total. I'm not giving Scottie enough credit by calling him Nikola Jokic, by the way. But it's tee to green, like all these different numbers he's leading in. 5 runner-up finishes to go along with the 2 wins. Like, what do you value that against? Okay, but let's say Wyndham wins this week. He wins the Tour Championship. He's got more wins than anyone else this season, 4, and one of them's a major championship. You really need to have the conversation. And I think at that point it might tip towards Wyndham. But it just depends on what you value. I look too. I think it's an interesting. I don't necessarily see this being the case, but what if Chris Gotterup wins this week and he's the only guy with 4 wins and it includes the Tour Championship? Do you have to have the discussion then? I mean, you're at least the topic's worth bringing up. Same with Matt Fitzpatrick. That would be 4 wins. I know one is a team event at Zurich, but nobody else would have 4 victories and he would have the Tour Championship. I submit Cameron Young too. If he wins the Players and the Tour Championship, played pretty well in some of the majors. And he wins Doral, another big event. Nobody will have more. I mean, nobody will have 4 wins at that point. It's just interesting to have this discussion going into the Tour Championship. It just adds another level of intrigue. And I tend to still lean towards Scotty right now just because of the sheer consistency and just everything he's amassed. But truthfully, I think we could be seeing a tournament where you're playing for 2 titles, the Tour Championship and possibly Player of the Year here for several of these guys.
Well, I love that because it does give the thing a little more juice, right? The last 2 years, it was pretty much locked up. 7 wins, majors, 6 wins, majors. Like there wasn't, it wasn't rocket science. You know what I mean? We knew where this was going. But you mentioned the names, so let's go down the list because I was about to bring up some of those names, right? Scotty obviously is in contention. Wyndham is obviously in contention. I was going to bring up Matt Fitzpatrick because he does have 3 wins, and this would be a 4th, which nobody else would have. And it's the Tour Championship. Now his other win was Harbour Town. He was also right in there at the Players Championship up until the end. So I would have to put him in contention. I think Goddard would be there, and maybe Cameron Young if he wins. I don't think if Rory wins. It's only 2. Now, granted, it's 2 big ones, but I think the volume of some of these other guys, if they come through, I think would sort of put him out of the picture. Is there anybody else besides those 5 names that we mentioned that you could even possibly find a way to connect the dots and put them in for Player of the Year?
I don't think so. And I think truly, I would say Fitzpatrick and Gotterup and Young are kind of on the periphery, and the discussion is warranted. You definitely can have the point. I would say there's only been 2 players in the last 15 years who have won the Players and the Tour Championship in the same season, and it's Scotty and Rory, and both years they won Player of the Year. So I think it's worth having the discussion, but there's a clear nose in front for both Wyndham and Scotty. It's just I love that it's adding more juice to this thing, that we can have this discussion. This is the stuff you want to talk about with your buddies on Tuesday night before the Tour Championship, right? Is that, state your case. No, there's no way. There's no chance for Gotterup. Like you're crazy. It has to be Scotty. He's running away in all these different stats. That's what makes this fun. And I love that we were able to have this conversation this week.
Well, I think it does, like you said, it brings a lot more juice to the event. And because it does feel like there are 2 paths here, okay? Who's going to play better to determine the Player of the Year and who's going to walk away with the big prize? And how much does that mean? Because that's sort of been the allure of the Tour Championship every year. It's like you can crown somebody based on them winning this event. But there's all these other things and these, for lack of a better word, accoutrements that go with winning the Tour Championship that are really, really good for your career.
Yeah, and I think, too, about the guys who there's, look, Rory McIlroy, Scotty Scheffler, if they win the Tour Championship, it's obviously not the biggest thing in their career, right? But think about the years where this is the high point for some of these guys in terms of what they've achieved on the golf course. Really good players, Brandt Snedeker, Bill Haas, Billy Horschel, guys like that. Yeah. And you can see, retrospectively, if you look at the field this week, what it would mean to a guy like Russell Henley. That'd be the biggest win in his career. He's a guy who played for the University of Georgia. He's almost broken through in so many big events in recent years. That would be big. What would it mean for the career arc of a Chris Gotterup to get this biggest win of his career to date? What would it mean for Akshay Bhatia? Like these different guys who could see the biggest win of their career and then really kind of continuing to move up the ladder in terms of their professional achievements on the golf course. So there's so many interesting storylines. I think about the guys, think about Gary Woodland, the road he's taken to get to Eastlake is incredible. One of the best stories of the year, obviously. That would be great. Our guy, Alex Fitzpatrick, is at Eastlake. I mean, tell yourself that in February, right? That Alex Fitzpatrick, Matt's little brother, has just the same amount of chance to win the Tour Championship on the Tuesday of Eastlake week that his brother Matt does. I mean, there's so many great stories going into this championship, and I'm fired up to see it get going.
I think you hit on the two that I really find outside of, what this would do to a bunch of guys' careers. The story arc of Alex Fitzpatrick and Gary Woodland, has been remarkable. And of course, Gary will, start with Gary. He got within one stroke of the lead at the BMW, and then went to the ninth tee and just cold topped it.
It's not out of the realm of possibility here this week. Like, he's playing great golf. And just the waterworks we'd have if he was able to win this thing. I mean, you see his career in a different light in terms of a guy who kind of, we know why he struggled after winning the U.S. Open, and now he's back at Eastlake for the first time since 2019.
Yeah, and to see him be so open and honest about this entire process, I mean, for those that don't know, Gary's one of those guys that's so ridiculously athletically talented that most of us can't stand that he's that good at it. He wanted to be a college basketball player, and he went to a small school, and one year, I think it was freshman year, they played, Kansas at Allen Fieldhouse in one of the layups that, the big college teams do to get their season started. And he was out there, he's like, yeah, this ain't for me. Like, I am not good enough to hang with these dudes. So instead, I'll just go
all
pick
of
up
us who grew up playing sports had that moment where we're like, I think I need to find something else. His just came on a college basketball court and not at like a back lot in suburban Houston on a baseball field like mine did. Where it's like, I think I'm gonna pursue this any longer.
So instead, I'll just be one of the best golfers in the world and win a U.S. Open at Pebble Beach. That's my backup.
For sure. That was not my fallback.
I mean, it's really insane to think about him in that way. And I just love the fact that, he was so open and honest about it after what he did at Belle Reve and to put himself in this position. And I just hope that, for everybody that's going out to Eastlake and is going to be a part of this, maybe cheer quietly for Gary. Gary's a guy, like, the more loud and boisterous you are and you're trying to show him support, may actually go the other way for him. So understand his situation and cheer for him in the way that is maybe best for him,
I'd agree with that. Another guy on the other side of 40, like you and I are, it's a great story. Well, that's being kind there, but yeah. But Adam Scott. How about Adam Scott getting back to Eastlake? I mean, he would be an incredible story as well if he was able to put together a good week. So just go up and down the list from the first timers to some of the veteran guys who've had great seasons. It's kind of there's a little bit of a celebration element as well to this week where it's been a long season and these guys have played a lot of really great golf, and it's good to kind of celebrate that in the moment.
And again, you mentioned Alex Fitzpatrick, okay? It really is incredible to see the things that he's done. He's played 13 events. He made the cut in 12 of 13 of them. Of course, he teamed with his brother to win the Zurich Classic in New Orleans. And he's had 5 top 10s since then. 2 top 5s, 7 top 25s. The guy's absolutely made a fortune. I mean, this is the ultimate guy that had an opportunity, took advantage of it, and has now changed his whole career arc around because he got into the top 30, which means he's basically set up for next year, and he has the opportunity to go out there and do unbelievable things.
He might be the first player, I have to dig into this, but to have played the Tour Championship at Eastlake, the magical Kenya Open, and a tournament in Bahrain all in the same year. Yeah, that's where he was on the DP World Tour beginning of the year, and look at him now. So I think he's got to be the first to pull off that triple.
It's absolutely stunning to see how fast this is taken on for him, and it's truly amazing. So that's
magical
one of the
Kenya Open, by the
way,
has an amazing trophy. It's like a little rhinoceros. It's awesome. Okay. It's one of my favorite. The DP World Tour, they know what they're doing when it comes to trophies. They got like scepters and swords and such.
Well, speaking of that, we have to address the other issue, which is the fact that the DP World Tour and the PGA Tour are now teaming up for what will be an international sort of string of events in the fall after the PGA Tour is done with the FedExCup Playoffs or whatever they're going to be called in the future. There's going to be a true global presence in golf, traveling all around in this off season. And it's going to be, I think, really interesting. You're going to see the best players in the world go to a bunch of different places.
It's another example, too, of the PGA Tour seeing in all this mess from the last 3-4 years of players defecting and split tour era that we had, listening to people and the fans and what they want. And they're doing
Correct.
it again. It just seems, I remember an era 10, 15 years ago where it seemed like, there was a giant moat between fan desires and wants and, what the tour was kind of interested in pursuing. And now this really feels like a new kind of era in terms of, response to things that fans really seem to be interested in. So, hats off, man. I'm excited to see what this looks like. Isn't this what we all wanted? The best players
Right.
all getting back together on the same tour, regardless of who runs it, and playing in big events all over the world. Like, you can incorporate like the French Open or the Spanish Open, these great, let's have you have a sanctioned PGA Tour event at Valderrama. Like, we haven't had that since the WGC 20 something years ago. I mean, there's all kinds of interesting possibilities down the road. Not saying that specifically will happen, but that's kind of in the realm of where my mind goes when I read something like this.
I completely agree. And the thing about it, and we'll get to this in a minute. First of all, Brian does an amazing job of listening. We've talked about this all year long. He'll throw out big ideas, gauge people's reaction to it, and then fine-tune it into a more formal process and a more formal final presentation. The other thing, and I got to say this, and we'll get into what may or may not be with LIV after the break coming up, but at the end of the day, the thing that so many people that were big fans of LIV Golf complained about, said, well, the PGA Tour is just crushing any chance of a real global presence in golf where all these people can play. Well, they're not. They are basically doing the thing that you said they were trying to stop. And so what they've done now is twofold. I mean, if we got to be honest about it, somebody attacks our business, we're going to defend our business the best way we can. And the best way you can is to beat somebody else to the punch. And they have now formulated this thing that LIV was trying to formulate. And if you are one of those people, I don't know whether you're a bot or whatever you want to be or however you see yourself, and you've been very pro-LIV, and your adamant passion has been, well, there's not a real representation of a global tour that all these other places can go and have the best players in the world. You can't say that anymore. And if you're still upset about it, you're just saying that you've just wanted LIV to work and you didn't really care about the thing that you cared about, because they're giving you the exact thing that you said you wanted. And if you're still upset about it, that's a you problem. It's not a them problem.
I don't think I could say it any better or more succinct. I mean, if that's what you're doing, you're choosing a side and not an outcome, and so often
Correct.
we do that. You see that in whether it's, our everyday lives or politics or whatever it might be. It's, the outcome is ultimately what I'm most interested in. And this seems like an incredible step forward.
Absolutely. All right. We're going to take a quick break. We'll get to your questions in a minute. But when we come back, it may have been the last LIV event we've ever seen. What to make of what happens now and going forward. And don't forget, we'll get to your questions, and it will be in a brand new, incredible way. We'll get to that after this. Do you actually know what's in your creatine? Look, most brands chase flavors, formats, and marketing. Momentous went after the creatine itself. Pharmaceutical facility, reverse osmosis water, 6 stages of testing, 4 independent agencies. They got it done right. LiveMomentous.com, code Wingo, up to 35% off. All right, welcome back to Golf Live. Trey Wingo here with Justin Ray. So this much we know. LIV for 2026 is over. The team championship was canceled. The final win was in Indianapolis, and it was for less money than promised. They didn't tell the players that till very late, and nobody knows what's going to happen next, whether it will continue or whether it will absolutely go away. Whatever LIV may be going forward, it's never going to be the thing that it was intended to be, which was this incredibly disruptive, chaotic, world-dominant force in the game of golf. That ship has sailed. We don't know what's going to happen with a lot of the top players. There have been reports that Jon Rahm has already begun preparations for his return to the tour. Terrell Hatton, his walkout music was "I Want to Break Free," which I thought was kind of ironic because you put yourself there in the first place. No one forced you to go. But when his team won the championship, he couldn't have wanted to get off that stage any faster. And I just have to say, before we get into the total breakdown, one of the things that I find ironic, karmic, maybe just coincidental, the guy who won the last LIV event potentially ever, and the last one this year, Michael Lasasso, the former NCAA champion, youngest guy ever to win on LIV Tour at 22, has already put in his paperwork to qualify for the DP World Qualifying School. He knows where this ship is going, and that's the last guy to win at LIV. So if this is the end, what do we make of a very disruptive 5 years in the world stage of golf from LIV?
I think to make that final evaluation, we have to see what happens next still. I think that the fallout of the next 6 to 18 months and where these different players go, I think that's, until you see that happen, it's tough to make that full evaluation because we don't know what this looks like going forward. But I watched the last couple of holes. I wanted to see if Michael Lasasso could hold on. John Rahm was playing well, was in the mix.
Yeah, he did great.
Bryson was in the mix. Like, it was an entertaining final day, and I wanted to see that. And I also wanted to see how they went off air because I thought it would be pretty revelatory. And if you could deduce anything except this is the last time we're coming on TV, I don't know how you could walk away and not think that. The number one thing would be, and kudos to Arlo White, who has been adversarial at times with people on this show on social media. It's all good. It's part of it. But he said, he gave so much credit to the TV crew, the behind the scenes people.
Always a class act. Always a class thing to do.
Yeah, and he essentially, but it made it sound like these people aren't going to have a place to work next year, is the way that if you read between the lines, that's what it kind of sounded like. The way it seemed like they kind of were wrapping up the entire picture. Like there was an air at the beginning of that final segment where it seemed like it's the end of the season, but it really just kind of drifted into, hey, what a great ride this has been. You could walk. I left thinking, oh, that's the last broadcast. That's the way it felt from all angles, whether it was a friend of mine who I've got to work with who's wonderful, Henny, one of the presenters. She basically made it sound like this is it. Like, I don't know how you could walk away seeing that broadcast and not think that that's what happened. And then, obviously you mentioned what Lasasso is doing, who, by the way, great finish, way to come through, clutch up and down to get the win, to beat John Rahm by a shot. But he's already filed his papers for Q School. And then the cryptic post by their biggest star the next day. It's
Bryson
tough to
DeChambeau.
deduce. Yeah, it's tough to walk away from that and not think that this is probably, if not completely gone, it's something that doesn't even resemble anything close to what it was in the previous 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, not even close. And I feel for those people. I really do. Because, look,
100%.
again, you and I have talked about this. I've been very honest about this. When LIV started, they came to me and wanted me to be the host of the tour. And I never felt comfortable with it. In fact, you and I talked about it at a great deal because I valued your judgment and your opinion. And you helped me come to those conclusions. I was thinking I was going there anyway, but you helped me through that process. So I want to be clear for anybody that went to work for LIV on the broadcast side. I don't have any judgment on them whatsoever. I was fortunate to have the ability to choose not to do it, by things that I've already done in my career. And I just didn't feel like that was a place I wanted to be. So I have no judgment or harshness to anybody who went to work. My only concern is that all those guys that went there, I hope they get paid. Because we talked to one of the guys from Fresh Tape Media, did a little short podcast with him. They offered him $200,000 on a $1.2 million invoice. And if this thing goes through bankruptcy, that's probably the best offer he's going to get. And, I feel for all of those people. The people I don't feel for.
That happening is not a condemnation of the character of the people who are
not at all.
It's the fact that the business is falling apart and you're funding it away. So it's so unfortunate across the board in terms of all the people who had depended on particular promised income or whatever it might be. Go back to you. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interject.
That's a really good point.
Yeah,
I have no problem with any of those people doing what they did because it was an opportunity, and most of us in this business are always looking for opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, I'm with you.
The other part of it, though, I have to say, is when I hear someone like Bryson say, well, first of all, if you don't know what Justin was alluding to later, he put up a picture. It was a great run on Monday, which certainly sounds like the whole thing is falling apart. They may find a way to get some funding, and based on, I don't know. It's never going to be the thing it was. But when I hear people like Bryson say, I think we deserve another shot, or, you hear Lee Westwood yapping at Rory and thinking about the value that we bring. I think people don't understand what the word value means when they say these things. I think that everybody in the LIV ecosphere, because they were paid gobsmacks amount of money, and I'm talking about the players, suddenly believed that there was this inherent value because people were throwing buckets of cash at them. But in reality, your value is what someone is willing to pay you to do the job. And I don't feel like they deserve, if they can make it work, great. But I don't think anybody deserves some sort of opportunity when you burn through $6 billion in 5 years. That we know of. I mean, let's just be honest. That's the only paper trail amount we can find because they have to file certain things in certain countries. For all we know, it could be double that. It could be $10 billion that they've gone through in 5 years. $12 billion. We don't know. So when we talk about value, there has to be a return on something. And so when we brought value. Did you really? Did you really do that? Well, you saw the crowds in Adelaide. We knew Australia was a sports med country before LIV got there. Did you see the crowds in South Africa? Really? You're telling me the place that gave us Gary Player, Ernie Els, Retief Goosen, Brendan Grace, among others, didn't value golf? We knew that already. The job for you guys was to try and figure out to make a way to make it work financially and make it monetarily viable. And once your Saudi sugar daddies left, it was impossible. So I don't feel like, we deserve all this. No, it's like the line from Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. Too late, you had your chance, muffed it. And now we got to figure out a way to move on. And yes, in consecutive weeks, I've quoted Ibiza and Chitty Chitty Bang Bang on this show.
That's excellent work by you in terms of the quoting. I'm a big fan of that. As many obscure references as we can. That's not that obscure, but as many different things we can draw from to make this conversation have as much character as possible. I'm all about. By the way, the thing that I've always thought was funny about the Australia and South African events, they were obviously huge successes on the ground. That's the basic economic principle of scarcity. They haven't had a big event like that, and they were starved for it, and that's how they reacted, i.e. St. Louis last weekend. They hadn't had a big
showdown,
a significant golf event in 8 years since the PGA Championship was there, and they were the biggest crowds they've ever had for a BMW Championship. That's not to decry the South African and Australian success at all. It's just that I think some people look through the wrong lens in terms of assessing the value there. But look, you can go to those markets and really have big success, and I think that'd be a great strategy to apply to maybe this new PGA DP World Tour venture that broke a couple days ago. So, but to my general broad assessment of what I got from Sunday afternoon's broadcast, it was impossible to not feel like this was a kind of a moratorium on the entire thing.
Yeah, Alan Shipnuck wrote a great article. I think it's on Scratch about the entire event.
Yeah.
There were a couple of really things that stood out. He basically said, on April 15th, they were told, shut it down. We're not giving you another dollar. And that's what we reported in April. Same thing. And he had an interview with Greg Norman where he asked Greg, who was, of course, the captain leading this thing all the way out of the gate. And he said, I really have no feelings about it one way or the other. And then he said, I kind of wish it would just go away. I mean, that was Greg Norman saying that, okay? And he couldn't have been more face forward in getting this thing as far as it could go and as well as it could go. And then there was that great little anecdote at the end where
it was so good. And from a writing perspective is what I mean, so good. It was,
yes.
Yeah, it was really good writing.
Really well captured. The last line, if you haven't read the Shipnuck article, and you should go read it stem to stern, it's fantastic. 2 construction workers were taking down the LIV signs. And he said, hey, Alan Shipnuck said, hey, what are you going to do with those things? And the worker said, I don't really know. These guys said they don't need them anymore. And that was the last line of the article. Also a sort of an indication of where it's going. And the last thing I want to say on this, because we'll cover it, how it goes going forward. But, people will say, well, LIV did open up the purse strings on the PGA Tour and gave the players a lot of money. And yes, that happened. But by artificially inflating the value of things, it created massive chaos, not only for LIV, but for the PGA Tour, who realized we can't do this. We can't have all this kind of money in no-cut events, which that was the thing with LIV Star, no cuts. There was none of that. So when you say, yes, look at all the money it brought in, but when you artificially inflate the value of something, everything, in all likelihood, always crashes. So hopefully we'll find a balance here going forward.
And the one thing I would say is that it did force the tour to look into innovation. It made them reassess strategy, and I think
absolutely
that is a positive. But I'm with you on the economic sensibilities of the entire thing. It was always propped up by an artificial marketplace with an investor that was interested in ulterior things besides making money, and ultimately time ran out.
And if they can make it work, I applaud Scott O'Neill for trying to find a way to get it done. We'll see how it happens, but the finale of it all really sunk in for both of us in the way it was presented to us in Indianapolis. All right, we've stalled long enough. When we come back after the break, ladies and gentlemen, your questions and comments in the new revelatory way. Stay with us.
So when I tell you Cash App has been a game changer, trust me, I mean it. The Cash App card, available to teens 13 to 17 with sponsorship from an eligible parent or guardian, every transaction triggers a real-time notification for you to see. If you're ready to give your teen more independence and stay in the loop, download the Cash App and sponsor their account today.
Okay, back with you on Golf Live. It is time for your portion of the program where you have submitted questions on our YouTube page and comments, and we react to them and respond to them. And again, if you want to be a part of this process of the show, go to our YouTube page and put the questions and comments in there, and we will actually get to them as many as we can. Katrina, how many questions do we have today?
Today we have 7 questions.
7 questions. Katrina, there was a rumor over the last couple of weeks that you are not an actual person, you are AI. And we tried to debunk that last week, right?
Correct. I have heard this rumor going around.
Yes, but still some people are not sure. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let us introduce you to the great Katrina.
It's a drum roll.
There she is. And this is the AI test. This is the AI test. Wave your hand in front of your face. See, there you go. There you go.
Not AI.
Not AI. If, by the way, that's a helpful tip. You ever think you're getting scammed by somebody, ask whoever that is to wave their hand in front of their face, and that messes up the entire AI algorithm. So, little helpful tip here. All right, without further ado, Katrina, real person, what is the first question?
Okay, our first question is, Scotty just passed Tiger as the PGA Tour's career money leader. Does that record mean anything anymore with today's purses?
I mean,
No.
not to me.
No, but I will tell you one thing that Scotty is doing that does matter, that can give you context historically. He's about to win his 5th consecutive single-season moneyless title. Nobody in the history of the PGA Tour has done that. Not Tiger, not Jack, not Tom Watson. That is another... Look, it's not the end-all, be-all, obviously, and it's not the same evaluator of a season that we had 50, 60 years ago when it was basically if you won the money list, you were the best player in golf. But to lead that statistic 5 consecutive years, it's another kind of notch in the cap of Scotty Scheffler's unbelievable 5-6 year run, what has become an incredible prime.
Well, I think that's really important because raw data without context isn't really helpful. Like we've talked about this before. Should I go for it on 4th and 2? And the data will say, well, you get it 80% of the time. Yeah, but you're including a 4th and 2 in the first quarter of a game in September and giving that the same value as a 4th and 2 with the playoffs on the line in the 4th quarter in December. Those are not the same thing.
And so the Titans and Texans front sevens aren't the same. And
Exactly. So putting it in the context that you just said, puts it in a way that you can interpret it without with understanding what it really means, because the dollars are going to continue. Like Jack should be, if it's just on he won the most and did this, he should probably be the head of it. It's just that the dollars have gone out the roof. So that's great way.
When Tiger turned pro, the career money leader on the PGA Tour was Greg Norman, and I think it was like $8.6 million. Yeah. So Scotty's season is like $20 million this year. No, the career money list is, it's a sign of progress and prosperity and inflation, but that's about it at this point.
Yeah, I think Tiger topped 8 million 6 or 7 times in his career in a single season. I mean, that's just ridiculous. All right, Katrina, what's the next question?
The next question is, Wyndham Clark has 3 wins this year, including the U.S. Open and BMW. Has he made Player of the Year a real debate?
Yeah, I'm glad we talked about that earlier, and I think it is, and I think it's more than just those two. It's the way we mentioned. What I really like about it, and again we alluded to this earlier, is that how they play this week may determine the entire thing, and isn't that what you want out of a playoff?
Yeah, absolutely. We still have something to play for here. Last week of the season, everybody's itching for football. We know it's around the corner. Hang on, we got another great stroke play event coming down the stretch between now and when the big football season starts. So I love that. We talked about it earlier. I love that there's still something to play for here, and there's arguments to be made for 5 different guys, 2 stronger than the other 3, but it's going to be really interesting to see how this unfolds this week.
All right, Katrina, what's next?
Our next question is, Michael Lasasso became LIV's youngest winner at 22. Does that change the idea that LIV is mostly for older stars?
Joaquin Niemann, I wouldn't call him an older star. He's won a bunch on tour. I don't know what it means for LIV going forward because I don't know what LIV is going forward. I was happy to see Lasasso win, and he sort of alluded to Jackson Coyvan winning the 3M. And that little banter back and forth between the two of them that they've obviously known each other for a long time. Again, when it comes to putting anything in context for LIV, I don't know what LIV is or if it will be. So I really don't think I can answer that question.
Yeah, it's tough to answer. I will say, though, that they had been a landing spot really for a couple of years for some really good young talent, whether it was David Puig or Tom McKibben or now Michael Lasasso. There's been some really talented, Eugenio Chikara was there and then left. I mean, they did a pretty good job of trying to bring in some young talent, and obviously it didn't end up all panning out the way they wanted, but there was, look, initially, yes, it felt like it was Champions Tour light maybe a little bit, but they did do a good job of infusing some young talent along the way, and a nice finish if you're looking for one in terms of having Lasasso get his first victory there to finish it off.
And we'll see what happens with him as he goes to the DP World Qualifying School. All right, Katrina, next question.
Our next question is, Miyu Yamashita just won by 9 and tied the LPGA scoring record. Is she entering the conversation with Nelly and Gino?
We got a Miyu Yamashita question. I am so excited. All right, if you don't know this player, she won the AIG Women's Open last year. She cannot be 5 feet tall. She's 4'11". She hits it about 215 yards, 220 yards. Does not hit it very far off the tee. She is a magician on and around the greens. And the course they had last week was perfect for a player of, let's say, distance impaired. It wasn't. It was like Colonial or Harbor Town, where you don't necessarily have to power it around a golf course. But look, Miyu Yamashita, I was really excited to see her after all the success she had on the Japanese tour, and she's followed that up with some great play here in the United States. It was an unbelievable performance last week, but look, Gino just won her 10th tournament. Nelly is the far and away clear number 1, winning 2 major championships this year. Let's pump the brakes a little bit before we put Yamashita in the same conversation as Nelly and Gino.
Well, I think you have to look at it the way Kevin Kisner sort of looked at his career when he's like, are you going to win here? So probably not, because I don't hit it far enough, but they pay a hell of a lot of money for 12th place. You know what I mean? And Yamashita obviously has the ability to win, but that 215 as opposed to what, 280, 290, 300?
265, significant.
That's a big deal.
It's a big deal. I might be underselling her a little bit at 215, but I remember seeing some numbers in tournaments she won where that was the average. Look, she's one of my favorite players in the game to watch.
You have talked about her a bunch. You have.
She's terrific, and she's going to win some golf tournaments. Don't get me wrong, but I'm not putting her in that Nelly Gino class. Not yet.
All right, Katrina, next question.
Scotty finished number 1 in FedExCup points, but everyone starts Eastlake even. Is that actually fair?
Yes, because it's a playoff. Like I hated when they gave strokes. Like to me, once you start the playoffs, the regular season is over, right? Like how many times have we seen a number 1 seeded team get home field advantage in the NFC or AFC and they get bounced because they didn't play well? I am 100%. If it's a real playoff, then make it a real playoff. And we alluded to the changes at the top of the show. Now, I think that we're going to have this situation in the 2028 version, which we talked about. Whoever wins that final stroke play championship, tour champion, congratulations, winner, but the top 32 are going to go on and play for something else. And as long as we have a delineation between what's regular and what's postseason, I'm completely good with it. I hate the idea of giving people strokes going in.
I do miss seeing our guy Steve Sands at the whiteboard. He was Korniacki before Korniacki breaking down the FedEx Cup. Like, he wasn't talking about Maricopa County, though. He was talking about, can Brant Snedeker leap Bill Haas, and here are the point scenarios. Yeah. I'm with you. I like this new idea moving forward. Starting strokes was simpler to follow, but also strange. And like I said, this is always a square peg, round hole situation where nothing's ever going to be perfect, but I do think we are moving towards something more perfect.
And I think if you start with like a 5-stroke lead, it changes the way you play. And suddenly you're not really playing the way you've played to put you in that position. And that was kind of weird too.
Selfishly too, trying to do stats for the Tour Championship, like player history, when they have different starting points, it's just a mess. Yeah. So selfishly, I'm happy we're moving on as well, but that's my own work day-to-day type thing that makes it easier for me.
Doesn't make it invalid. Doesn't make it invalid. All right, couple questions left. Katrina, what do we got?
Our second to last question is, Ricky Fowler and Bud Cauley both fell out of the top 30 at BMW. Is that playoff drama or too brutal?
No, it's playoff drama. I mean, like, again, if we want to have a playoff, let's have a playoff. I mean, the postseason is filled with heartbreak for some of the greatest players in every single sport, and they just didn't find it. They didn't have it that day. They didn't give it. Go back and look at Garrett Cole in the World Series. Was it last year or 2 years ago? In the 5th inning, they couldn't get an out. Garrett Cole's one of the best pitchers in baseball. If they had found a way to win that game where they had the lead at Yankee Stadium, that might have changed the entire postseason. But they couldn't get out of that 5th inning. Garrett was the worst 5th inning, I think, in Yankee postseason history, and it cratered their chances to win. At the end of the day, when playoffs are playoffs, it's time to put up or shut up.
Do you want drama, or do you want everything to be hunky-dory and nice?
Exactly.
And you got to pick what you want and roll with it. So if 2 guys move on, 2 guys have got to go home. That's the way it works.
As Herm Edwards said, you play to win the game, not to be granted access to the next round. Yeah, exactly. We don't play just to play it. That's why we keep score. All right, last question, Katrina.
Our final question is, a Georgia golfer is suing the NCAA for a 5th year of eligibility. At this point, does college golf need completely new eligibility rules?
Well, at this point, all of college athletics need new eligibility rules. Let's be 100% clear. Look, I'm not familiar with the particulars of this case. If there was an issue or an injury or something I'm not aware of, they've finally capped it in college football at 5 years, so we won't have the situation like this kid Daquan Wright, the tight end who is now going to go back for LSU. By the way, kudos to the Big Ten for finally saying, this is stupid. We're not going to do this. We're not going to allow NFL players, people that have been in NFL camps, to come back to the Big Ten. Meanwhile, the SEC is like, well, we don't feel good about it. So I don't know what the particulars are, but I know that everything in college
Drew Lock, you won your Super Bowl, okay?
Yeah,
You're only, 31, 29.
Yeah.
Come on back to Mizzou, man. We're not sure about Austin Simmons. We're excited, but, it's ridiculous. It's crazy. It's
J.R. Smith played college golf after winning championships in the NBA. J.R. Smith played college golf.
That's a little different, but I mean, obviously I'm kidding about the Drew Lock thing. I'm just throwing out something hyperbolic for how ridiculous it is. I don't know the specifics on this case either. I'm sure, everything trickles down from football and basketball in the college sports universe, whether that's money or, storylines and transfer things and things of that nature. So it is insane, though, that, you're watching NFL training camp cut waiver wire things and thinking, oh, man, we could use a tight end. It could really help our linebacker room.
It's nuts. And
it's crazy.
The only reason this exists is because the NCAA was a bunch of chicken you-know-what. They didn't want any part of it. They knew it was coming. It had gone through the courts. It was just a matter of time. And they still tried to say, no, this shouldn't happen. Bro, that ship had sailed. That train had left the station. You do something about it now. Put up some parameters and guidelines. Instead, they were the ostrich that found the biggest hole and dug and put their head in the sand.
Got me all riled up now. Come on, Katrina.
All right. Katrina, thank you very much for the questions. One more time. Let's do the AI test. One more time. There it is. Real as real can be.
Real as real can be. Thank you for having me.
You got it, Katrina. We'll have to do this on a regular basis now. So for Katrina and Justin and Duncan and the grand wizard behind it all, Nita, I'm Trey Wingo. Thanks for watching this edition of Golf Live. Don't forget, if you want to get in the comments, go to the YouTube page, put them in there, and that's where we'll get them, and we'll put them on the show next week. Until next time, good people.